Why is food so far away? This tomato traveled over 1,500 miles just to reach your plate. How is that possible? We can build towers that scrape the sky, but can't grow a tomato down the block? Something is wrong. Somewhere along the way, we lost our purpose. The only way to reclaim it is by looking back to the dawn of civilization. Before cities, before borders, before division. Back when people gathered where food grew. Back when rivers fed the land and the land fed people. From the Fertile Crescent, civilization rose from seeds that asked for nothing and provided everything. Everything we needed for life. Food was not a brand, not a commodity, not flown, not sorted, not labeled and stacked and stored. Food was a place, a rhythm, a relationship with the divine. And somewhere between profit and progress, we lost our way. And we did it to ourselves. We designed distance into our daily lives and called it efficiency. We wrapped convenience in plastic and called it progress. We reshaped the land to make room for machines and erase the space where food once lived. We placed our trust in everything except the soil under our feet. It is our fault, whether we meant it or not. We allowed them to take our very life source and sell it back to us at a premium. We allowed regulations that made it nearly impossible for the average person to grow their own food. We allowed subsidies paid with our own money to corporations, creating food not for nourishment, but for expansion. And we accepted it because it was convenient. We offshored our nourishment to the unknown. And we have no idea how far it traveled, or the hidden costs it carried. Why is food so far away? Mass production demands mass transit. Mass transit demands mass fuel. Mass fuel demands mass sacrifice. The wasted energy, the wasted time, the wasted life, and the costs we could not imagine. The cost to our health, or substandard regulations. The cost to the worker, underpaid and overworked. The cost of autonomy over what enters our own bodies. It's incalculable, the strain on our ecosystem, the strain on our lives. And the farther food travels, the more fragile we become. The more dependent we grow on systems we cannot control. Flashback. In the Great Depression, when the world collapsed, people still had a way to feed their families. Money vanished, jobs evaporated, security unraveled, but food stayed close. A cow in the backyard, land to till, neighbors to trade with. Times were brutal, yes, but the land held them together. Not abundantly, but enough. Enough to endure, enough to rebuild, enough to survive. But today, we have built a different world. And when the world shook again, in lockdown, we faced a truth our ancestors never had to face. We could not feed ourselves, not even a little. No cow in the yard, no ground to till, no neighbors to trade with. Just crowded grocery lines, delayed trucks, and higher costs. Our distance exposed our surrender to a system so fragile that it cracks without warning. We did not lose food, we lost proximity. We lost the ability to sustain ourselves. And after all of that, we changed nothing. Why is food still so far away? Fragility is not an accident. It is designed. And design can and must be redesigned. And we try. We grow on rooftops and balconies. We celebrate community gardens and urban farming. Beautiful gestures, but small. They point toward the truth, but they do not restore it. And they do not answer the question. Why is food so far away? What would it take to bring it home again? What if we learned from our very first cities instead of those of this last century? What if we had built not around roads, but around roots? What if buildings were not containers, but ecosystems? Imagine structures that grow food as naturally as they shelter people. Roofs that harvest sunlight, atriums that function as farms, towers that breathe, circulate, and nourish, food that travels 0 miles, a building where the source of life sits at its center, because a city that can feed itself can free itself, free from fragility, free from scarcity, free from the silent panic of depending on miles that we cannot see and systems we cannot touch. Maybe the future we want is not above us, not beyond us, not hidden in technology, but beneath us, in the soil, in the seed, in the places we forgot to look. Civilization began with food, and maybe it begins again when food returns to the center of life. When we stop accepting distance as destiny, when we stop believing fragility is normal, when we finally ask, why is food so far away? What if it wasn't? What if we built a living building?